Vamos a presentar a Dave Sloan mientras sacan las cosas. Él es CTO for Worldwide Public Sector Focus on Global Market Development de Microsoft. Un título largo, lo sabemos, pero muy contundente lo que nos va a decir Dave. Dale la bienvenida.
Hi.
Hi, nice to
so
meet
much.
you.
You as well.
You need el slide?
Little clicker.
¿No?
Yeah.
¿Alguien tiene el slide? ¿Que nos ¿El slide?
I can start while I wait.
Okay, thank
How
you.
about that? Fantastic. Buenos dias. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to País Digital for being such wonderful hosts. Wonderful. So my name is Dave Sloan, and I'm fortunate to be the Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft focused on worldwide public sector. What that means on a day-to-day basis is that I work with governments all over the world on their digital transformation agendas and strategies, and try to find ways that they can innovate in a fashion that leverages the most powerful platforms and products anywhere in the world, but is still in line with their national goals and values and regulations and legislation and things like that. So if I had a bumper sticker on the back of my car, it would say, innovation with compliance. And more, those conversations with governments around the world are focusing on the intersection between democracy and technology. And there's a pretty good reason as to why that is happening now. And that is because we are in the midst of Votorama. This is a crazy time in the world for elections. Over 75% of the world's population that live in democracies are voting this year. That's over 2 billion voters worldwide. And the fact that this is happening at the exact same time when we are undergoing a fundamental revolution in terms of technology and the impacts of that technology on society is creating some very legitimate and important questions within government and within citizenry. And of course, you couldn't have somebody from Microsoft up here and not talk about AI. So of course, a lot of that has to do with artificial intelligence. Now let's be clear. There's a lot of conversation about risk here. There should also be tremendous conversation about reward and potential. The aspiration of including artificial intelligence into elections is actually quite promising. Campaigns are able to do more rapid, detailed research, even with small staffs. Candidates who are working on shoestring budgets in terms of the amount of people that they have to leverage can all of a sudden scale their efforts up. And the degree of high content conversation that you can have with voters and population, even on a personalized level, is very, very exciting. And, as with any technological scenario, it also comes with risks. So let's talk a little bit about the risks here. Lies are nothing new to elections. For as long as there's been elections, there's been lying in elections. That's just the way it is. Even deception through technology has been prevalent in recent elections where you have fake websites set up for candidates or inauthentic chatbots that are generating conversations that are not actual. So none of this really comes as a surprise. The dramatic transformation, of course, is in the quality and ease of generating fake content through generative AI. And this disinformation and deception is what is really the heart of a lot of the concern. And the risk is real. Even in this current election cycle, we have seen deceptive and disinformation messaging in Poland, in Moldova, in the United Kingdom. We saw a deep fake video of at the time, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak go viral before it was debunked. And in the current US election cycle, which unsurprisingly, based on my accent, is the one that I'm most familiar with, we have seen, and folks, we're Microsoft, so we don't have a problem naming names. When there are people who are doing bad things, we tell who's doing bad things. So in the US election, we've already seen deceptive information about the war in Ukraine coming from 70 different Russian actors attempting to influence the US election debate about support for the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military. We've seen state-sponsored Chinese actors generate both deceptive imaging as well as audio in order to create divergent messages, things that increase the social divide in the United States. And we've even traced their involvement to a series of robocalls that were made in New Hampshire with a very lifelike voice of President Biden, who did not record that message or that conversation. We've also seen the Iranians become very involved in creating deceptive messaging in the United States around support for the war in Gaza. And recently, Microsoft detected a breach of a senior campaign official in the presidential race in the United States that was done by Iranian intelligence. Fortunately, Microsoft was able to, as we do, detect it, mitigate it, cut off the access, and then publish publicly what had happened as a warning for other campaigns. So make no mistake, the risk is real. This is not a drill. This is happening in elections around the world today. So as much as I would love to focus on the promise, as the company who brought these tools into the world, we have to be part of the solution if we have contributed in any way to the creation of the problem. So how does Microsoft work to address some of these threats that present themselves to democracy with these new tools? So I'm going to highlight three main areas of focus. There's a lot we're doing around the world, but this is sort of the three big titles. The first is election integrity, the second is campaign security, and the third is disinformation defense. So let's jump in on all three. On election integrity, we actually are very concerned about the degree to which the election machinery itself is subject either to actual compromise or simply a loss of faith in that election machinery. We're talking about the actual casting and collection and counting of votes, which has become more and more digital. So Microsoft created, and then created as open source, in other words, gave away for free, a piece of software called Election Guard. And this is intended to be the deep plumbing of elections that the companies who create election machines or election management software, the sorts of things that are used by secretaries of states and election commissions around the world, can leverage at no cost in order to have a secure infrastructure underlying the actual process of casting and collecting votes. This is something that we now accept contributions from anywhere, not just within Microsoft, but Microsoft made the initial investment and launch of this Election Guard software to try to protect that fundamental layer. Another very extensive and expansive area is our support for campaigns. So, campaigns are good at a lot of things. They're good at creating events, they're good at creating messaging, they're good at promoting their candidate. They're not always so great at information technology, right? They're typically run on a shoestring budget, and they don't want to spend that money on staff or training to make their IT better. They want to spend it to get more votes and get more marketing and get more advertising and things like that. But we've recognized a critical gap here. So we now offer campaigns support, which means training both on the cybersecurity side, how to establish a cybersecure campaign that is resistant to hacking, as well as how to properly use generative AI in their campaigns in ways that are responsible. So hopefully by encouraging and promoting this at all levels of campaigns, we're able to create sort of an infrastructure and a foundation that campaigns will take advantage of. And since these campaign staffs often run campaign after campaign, when we enrich that population, it tends to have a knock-on effect that is beneficial for years after the training itself as the campaigns become more and more exposed to this. So imagine this is like a security and AI boot camp for the candidates that are working to get elected. Also, from a campaign safety perspective, we have, an interesting perspective on the world at Microsoft because we see so much of the traffic that goes on throughout the internet, throughout the world, on a real-time basis. It's how we keep our cloud secure. It's how we keep our customers secure. Well, it's how we can keep campaigns and elections secure also. So we now have open dialogue with governments around the world as to when their election seasons are happening and when they are heating up, so that we can have additional scrutiny from a cybersecurity perspective and a direct point of contact and line of communication with those campaigns and with those governments, so that when we see something that is out of place, we can notify them very quickly. The scenario that I had mentioned before about the infiltration of a senior advisor on a presidential campaign in the United States, we already had a Microsoft point of contact within that campaign. So we didn't have to search around on the website or call some, junior person in Iowa. We knew exactly who we needed. They knew who we were. They knew it was an authentic outreach from us, and we were able to address the risk very, very quickly. So having that heightened level of awareness and involvement of campaigns and elections around the world has a tremendous positive and securing effect as well. Disinformation is obviously the biggest headline when it comes to democracy and technology. And I'm going to focus on one very small part of it here because I think it's a really fascinating one. There's a lot more than we could possibly cover in a session of this length. So you'll forgive me for just cherry picking one example here. Images and videos are at the core of how we establish truth about the world. Right? Even the phrase "seeing is believing," right, is very well ingrained into our culture. But the prevalence of deepfakes and the very, very small expense and quick time in which they can be created threatens to undermine that "seeing is believing." I can't even believe what's in front of my eyes. That's not a phrase we want to hear in elections and in democratic environments. So we have created, together with a bunch of open source projects, essentially a fingerprint for photos and videos. Call it a photo print, a cryptographically verifiable code that is embedded inside the picture that establishes where it was taken, when it was taken, how it was taken, and if it has been altered since it was taken. If we can establish those things, we can do a lot towards verifying the veracity of that photo. So that technology now exists, it works, and we are working to disseminate it throughout the ecosystem. Because you can go literally to that website there on Microsoft's site today and verify all that data about an image. That works today, but that data has to be in the image to begin with, which means we have to work with camera and video camera creators, with cell phone companies that are embedding those cameras to make sure that these cryptographic fingerprints get included in the photos and the videos. We have those relationships. We're building them with the largest manufacturers in the world, and the next generation of their cameras will have this information encoded in it. We also then have to work with media companies who are taking advantage of these photos and publishing them to make sure that they are using verified photos and sharing with their readers or viewers when a photo has been altered. So this entire topic of content provenance is one that I hope you'll hear a lot more about in coming years. But I want to tell you, the fundamental technology to make it happen exists and works today. It's just about spreading it throughout the ecosystem. And we realize that this is something that's best done in coalition. So we have teamed up with 26 of the largest IT, cloud providers, social media networks, everything like that in the world, and created a tech accord to combat deceptive use of AI in the elections. So you can check it out on the website. These are things like agreeing on goals, sharing information about techniques, agreeing on the support that we can provide for different elements, and basically creating unity among the tech community on what can be done here. We know this is not something we can do alone. We know this is a long effort, but I want you to know that Microsoft is committed to making sure that democracy and technology live and work well together. And I think we'll have a much more optimistic aspect to how AI and elections can live together as some of these changes propagate into the environment. Thank you so much for your time.
Muchas gracias, Dave. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.